So you get the idea. While they were doing this, Joseph was in Potiphar's house. David was a shepherd, right? Daniel, even Jesus, right? We spoke about him being a carpenter. The fact is that your pilot engine, for them, they had to build up the skills, getting themselves ready for the moment of ascent. Life is never going to be perfect, right? We're never going to wake up and we just say, guess what? I wish I won the lottery. Tomorrow I'm a multimillionaire. I could just go and retire. We have to prepare. God has never put anyone in any position who hasn't had to go through a journey. And the same way I tell people, I say, when I look at my journey as well in my career, I say, goodness, now I probably understand why I had to go through those phases in my life, because it has given me the tools to become even more successful in my current role. So now let's go back to the slide that shows the 3 phases. I think that slide, the stage is slide 19, yes. So I said yes, we will all go through this stage, and for some people it might be you get employed, at times you're underemployed, you get gainfully employed. You kind of go through, it's almost like a zigzag. Because there are times you feel you have a good job, the next time you're laid off, and you try like doing like something to help you get by. Or there's some people who are just exceptionally lucky. They're just living the life, you know, there's so much money, no need to hustle at all, and they're always like in retirement mode. But I think that's not what happens for most of us. And then let's go to the next picture. I gave this picture. This was really, it's one that I couldn't believe I could find this. This was 2014, and this was my office in the city. At this particular time, I felt I had the best life. I probably even look older there. Because when I look back, seriously, I tell people, I get to the office at the time, you know what it was like looking back over 10 years ago. I show up with my heels to work, looking beautiful, but I was miserable. I had a good job, I had a management role, I had a team, I was making the good 6 figures, everything was fine. But showing up to work was like hell. And so for some people, it's like, the money may be good, but you also have the life that you also want. I had to make a choice. And then the transition here was, I became underemployed because when I left this particular role, there was a time in between that COVID hit is when I was working from trying to build myself up. What am I going to do next? How do I position myself? What does the future look like? And in between, you can see I put gainfully employed here, and then I put an exit professional, because here at this time, I remember coming home one day, I had a job interview. And then when I finished the job interview, I remember having a conversation with my husband at the time. I'm like, babe, I don't think I can do this. In the plus 15, the interview, the hiring manager for this particular role, his mannerism, everything was just like my ex-boss that I was running away from. And I said, babe, like, is this actually real? Is this really what the corporate world really still looks like? Do I still really want this life? And then I said, I don't think I'm actually going to do it. He's like, it's actually going to be your choice. Like, you need to make that decision for yourself. I left, we went home, and interesting, 2 days later, I got an offer to do for the role. I looked at the offer, I'm like, babe, can you believe that this role was going to pay me about $30,000 more than what I left previously? But I said, am I sure I can still do this? I called the director and I said, right now I don't think it's going to be a good fit. You know, I'm at the stage in my life where I think I just need a little bit of time to wait. She offered me an extra $20,000. And she said, oh yes, for the sign-up fee, on your first pay, we're going to give you $20,000 on top of that. And that was a direct competition to the oil and gas company I was working for. But you know, I couldn't sign that job offer. And that was when I realized that I had gone through a lot of trauma within my previous life I never knew that I had to deal with. Seriously, you know, people kind of say, just deal with it, right? It's just work. I just couldn't. Well, fast forward, a couple of years later, I have been able to build a business for myself and a platform where I now teach. I sat down with my husband. I said, there was a day a vice president sent me a message and said, Full, I want you to coach me. And then I laughed. I said, really? You probably will make way more money than I do. He's like, no, I've seen you speak, I've seen you do that. I want you to actually coach me. But then I realized that the journey that I had to go through had prepared me for this season in my life. So let's go to the next one, that we're going to then talk about what this looks like. The underemployed, or when you're actually unemployed, is a time you need to kind of take stock. Identify the skills that you are great at. I call this your unique value assets.